Welcome to another edition of Power Lunch Podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. I'm excited to be here with you. We're coming on a little bit early if you're watching this live. Normally, we're on at noon every day, not just for the episode, but we're doing our lives from day to day. But today, we're on a little bit early. We've got a call that's preempting this, and so we're going to make sure that we dive into the topic. Today, we're going to be talking about thinking like a giant, what that means for you as an entrepreneur or as your business owner. Why you should be thinking as big as possible, how you can be thinking that way, and hopefully this helps you to be able to bolster everything that you want to be able to accomplish, not just this year, but going forward into the future. Power Lunch starts right now. What's up? I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. I'm the founder of Icon Status, a consulting and coaching agency, serial entrepreneur for over 20 years, 22 years and counting. And I love to talk about entrepreneurship and love to talk about how we can think bigger. And that's exactly the topic that we're talking about here today. If you're watching this live on LinkedIn or Facebook or even YouTube, make sure you drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. And I love to always get questions. And if you're having anything that you're discovering from this conversation, I hope that it's valuable for you and you'll share that with us. Today, we're talking about thinking like giants. And I wanted to share with you 5 reasons why you should be thinking as big as possible. And one of the reasons why this topic comes up is because oftentimes you'll hear entrepreneurs and they will talk about their business. And there is this dual mindset that is kind of pounding against us. Good morning, Amy. How are you? You caught us early today. One of the compounding thoughts is that we want to grow our business, but we don't actually want to be too big. And that happens for a couple of reasons. One is because we have this belief that, especially when you are transitioning from an employee to an employer or an entrepreneur, right? You have a capacity for the amount of work you have to do because you're the one that has to do the work. And when you have to do the work, then you know that in order to grow, you have to do more work and work harder, et cetera, to be able to grow your business. But there is a point of line of demarcation, if you want to call it, where eventually you only have a limited amount of time and resources and energy to be able to execute a certain number of jobs or a certain amount of work, which means that you can only grow so much based on what you can do. Typically, people turn around and say, okay, great. Well, now it means I need to hire someone else, right? And so that looks like growth in and of itself. But then hiring people and managing people becomes a job. And so eventually your capacity to do any particular job, whatever it is, or the type of job that you're doing at each level will change, and that capacity will become more and more limited. You get squeezed. And so our ability to grow in our own mindset and our own ability to be able to foresee growing to the next point is really what our biggest challenge is as business owners and entrepreneurs. So the thing that you get to do is to really start thinking, how can I be able to evolve through all these different changes? What I see most commonly with entrepreneurs is that when they are limited in their capacity to see their next level of growth, limited in their capacity to be able to see how they personally can manage that, then they restrict the business because they themselves can't go beyond that level. And so we have this invisible belief a lot of times that I have to work harder to be able to grow. And therefore, if I have to keep working harder, is it really worth it for me to keep doing that? Especially if you don't see your way clear to be able to make those outcomes that you want inevitable, that 1-to-1 input to output ratio, right? Or actually 1-to-5 or 1-to-10. If I put in an hour, am I going to get exponential results? And a lot of times when we're stagnant in our growth, we're not seeing any results. So here is how the giant thinking can actually help us to overcome all of that. And if it's a way to be able to frame more perspective around it. Now, before I jump into those, I want to let you know that we're sponsored by the 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind, which is a free Facebook group for 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs who want to grow to 7, 8, and 9 figures. And it's a free group where we have trainings, we have a lot of master classes, we have different events and things of that nature, a ton of content in there to be able to support you in your growth. If you're not yet a member, I'd encourage you to go to my Facebook profile, click the link there to join as well. I'll drop that in the comments here also. If you're a member, give us a thumbs up or a one in the comments to let us know how you're experiencing that group as well, because we want to make sure that we can support everyone who wants to be able to become a member. We'll drop that in the ticker below. 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind Facebook group. Now, let's jump into the top 3 reasons why, the top 5 reasons why you should be thinking like a giant entrepreneurial enterprise. And Grant Cardone actually, whatever you think of Grant Cardone, he actually illustrates one great point when he talked about the fact that the reason why he decided he wanted to be as big as possible in his business, because you look at the 2008 financial debacle that happened here in America and really rippled around the world in terms of the economic effects. And one of the reasons why that was so powerful is because certain banks became classified as too big to fail, right? So when you're too big to fail, it means that if you fail, you take down everything else with you. So you become a foundational piece of your industry, of the economic system, whatever the case may be. And so one of the reasons you want to get to be as big as possible is that you want to be, you want to have more fail safes in place, which means that you have a certain protection when you're associated with being a big or intimate part of the ecosystem that you're in, whether it's your city, your state, the country, the industry, whatever the case may be. So one of the biggest challenges that people face oftentimes is that they're not attached to anything of significance. So if you fail, then you just go away. All right. Amy, I see your question in the comments. I'm going to tap into that in a second. Okay. We'll tag that onto the end of this conversation. But when you have vendors, when you have sponsors, partners, whether a business inside the business or tangential partnerships, and people are aligned with you, they have investment in you, they have a stake in whether or not you succeed or fail. And so the bigger that you are, the more significant a part of their revenue, a more significant portion of their existence is really tied to yours. And so they have a vested interest in making sure that you succeed. So becoming too big to fail is a great way to be able to ensure the longevity of your business. Second thing is that brand awareness, right? When you create greater brand awareness, and you have more security, people believe you to be more trustworthy and dependable. And so if you're a smaller entity, people often look at you as being weaker or frail. While that may be cute or it may be helpful for you in the short term, or maybe be attracted to people because they have an aversion to a larger business or things of that nature. The fact that you are big enough to have that security and dependability, you've been around for a while, or you look like you're going to be around for a while, is a great way to be able to ensure that people can continue to trust in you, that you can continue to grow and develop as well. The third benefit to having a bigger business, to be thinking like a giant, actually becoming a giant, is that you have a longer runway, right? So obviously this one kind of makes much more sense. You got more cash flow, which means you have more time. You can survive for longer. You got more resources, and more resources means you can solve more problems. I like to use the example of the Great Chicago Fire. One of the reasons why the fire spread so quickly was because as the fire was burning, there was they had about 100 and some, maybe 117 or so firemen that they deployed, but they only had 17 water pumps, which means that you have a lot of people, but you don't have the resources to be able to actually spray on the fire and put the fires out. And so when you have that longer runway, you've got more resources at your disposal. You're able to put out more fires. So the small things don't become big things that actually take you down. And so you want to be able to do that. It's funny how when you are in a small company, every problem seems magnified because you have to agonize over spending the money or finding the solutions. And it doesn't mean you can't get creative. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be. It simply means that when you have more resources, you're able to dilute the effect of any particular thing against you. And so you're able to spread that around more. right? So you have more water pumps to put out more fires. Number 4 is that you're going to have predictable outcomes. One reason is because you have a deeper foundation. You're more solid. You've got more systems in place. You can afford to invest in the systems, to invest in insurance. And I don't mean just literal insurance, but all the things that will bolster your success going forward. You can have support. You can have coaching. You can have partnerships. You're more attractive to more people. And therefore, you have a greater foundation to be able to spread out to create more of an ecosystem, like we talked about in being too big to fail. So being too big to fail means that you have to have something that people can connect to, that they value. You create more value, and that's really important. You're able to have more history. You can hire better and greater talent and more talent to be able to help you to expand your business. That's harder to do when you're in a smaller enterprise or smaller entity. And it doesn't mean that you have to be there to get there, but we're talking about the thinking. And so if you're thinking that way and you're casting that vision, then you can start to be able to attract certain talent to be able to allow you to be able to grow, to be able to do more things. Let me know in the comments if this is valuable for you. Give me a thumbs up or a 1. Let me know what you're discovering as well. How does this apply to you and your business, even in what you're trying to accomplish? All right. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, number 5 is about having more stable infrastructure. And essentially, I call this being hurricane proof, right? So you need to be able to be bolstered with a deeper foundation, but also you're thinking about how bigger events cannot rattle you, right? So in the case of a recession, 2008, a lot of people who were buying houses and flipping them, they were one man or one woman operations, and they were buying up all these houses and things of that nature. And so they didn't have the infrastructure to be able to, 1, do the due diligence, 2, they didn't have the backstop of cash flow or readiness, and 3, because the event was so catastrophic, it takes an emotional toll on you. It takes a physical toll on you. It takes a financial toll on you. You've got to be able to withstand those blows and to be able to keep going. And so having that infrastructure in place where you've got a great team, you've got great systems, and you've got the financial stability to be able to do this, to withstand those blows of a hurricane, and an economic hurricane such as a recession or a depression, an economic hurricane in the case of the pandemic or something else like that. People often think about the best case scenario, right? And so when the worst case scenario happens, we're not prepared. So a pandemic is something that's outside the scope or outside the realm of possibility for most people. And yet now it should be the prevalent thing. Should we be more likely to expect another pandemic or less likely, right? And so if we look at it, all of the elements for a pandemic are always existing around us at any time. We still have global travel. We still have people who are, we don't have the collective idea about what we should do in the case of a pandemic. Some people are still against vaccines. Some people are still against masks, whatever the case may be. Whatever your perspective is, standing back and looking at it and say, these elements still exist. These conditions still exist for us to be able to do this. That means I need to be prepared in the event that this happens again, right? So with that being said, are you ready? Do you have the infrastructure being able to support that? And the bigger your infrastructure, the deeper and the stronger and the wider it is, the more powerfully you're going to be able to expand on that. Now, lastly, I want to throw in a bonus here. We had those 5 reasons, right? Being too weak to fail, 1, 2, brand awareness and security, 3, having a longer runway, 4, being able to create predictable outcomes, 5, having a more stable infrastructure. But the bonus I want to offer you is, if you want to call it number 6, you can, but it's simply the capacity, your capacity to be able to serve others, right? That means you have greater generosity because you have more money. You're able to serve more members of your family and be able to help them. You have lower stress because now you don't have all of the economic worries and the different things that are going on. Most people are plagued by financial stress. And interestingly enough, even those who make a lot of money, millionaires, decamillionaires, etc., they can still suffer from this poverty mindset or this scarcity mindset where they're afraid of losing their money. what can happen though when you start thinking like a giant is you're starting to think ahead in the future, pace yourself and say, really, what is the structure I need to be financially secure so that I can free my mind of that, right? And you put those systems into place. If you never are thinking that way, you never get to the point where you're able to actually access that level of stress-free living and peace of mind. And lastly, the greatest aspect of capacity is your ability to create more impact. If you are small and you're only thinking about yourself and your business, or your business can only impact a narrow frame of impact, then essentially you're always going to be with your head down, thinking very locally. You can't think more broadly and more globally, and you can't think about impacting people at a larger scale and larger um, a larger frame of reference, if you will. Amy had a thought, and it brings up a question. I kind of want to tap into this right quick. She said she had a thought that is limiting. Why grow a large business when I have no one to hand it over to? So that's actually a great point. And actually, a lot of people think that way. For many people, they start a business and it's actually just an extension of a job, right? It's really just a job where they have maybe hired one or two people to be able to assist them in what they're growing. In reality, your ability to be able to think bigger means that, well, I can exit this at some point, right? Because if you build it big enough, it becomes more desirable to someone else. And if you're thinking like a giant, you're thinking actually in terms of building it for an exit. Whether you sell it or not, it has the capacity to be sold, and therefore you can have suitors, you can put it on the marketplace. And when you sell it, you don't just make the money that you made through the life of it, but you're actually able to create an exit event, right? A cash flow event where now you are liquid fully. And so someone can pay you 5, 10, 25, 50 million, $100 million for this business or more. And so a lot of people are thinking that way from the very beginning, but they're not actually thinking like giants still, and they don't have all these elements in place. But when you do put them into place, you can actually create something that is really powerful, really impactful, and can change the trajectory of your life for yourself or for anyone else. Even if, Amy, you don't necessarily have anyone to hand it over to, you could sell it to someone that you believe is going to allow you to be able to continue your legacy. Because if you poured yourself, your blood, sweat, and tears into this business, why would you want it to die when you die? Why wouldn't you want it to be able to continue to help other people, to be able to support them, to be able to impact and transform their lives for years, decades, generations to come? So those are just some thoughts that we have around this. What are your thoughts as you've been discovering this whole process of listening to this conversation? What has it been doing for you in terms of elevating your thinking? Where could you be seeing yourself being limited in terms of what you want to accomplish, etc.? I'd love to hear your thoughts. LinkedIn, Facebook, drop those comments below. Let me know. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Share this with someone that you think it would be valuable for. As always, I'm here to serve. If you feel like you need support or would love to have a conversation about supporting your business, then feel free to reach out to me. Shoot me a message or send me a comment in the comments below, or shoot me a direct message, and let's see if we can determine if it's a good fit for us to work together, how we can support you in being able to create your giant-sized vision for your business and scale to that level. As always, it's great to have you here. Thanks, Amy, for your question and your comments now. Yes, we want to widen the view of possibilities for sure. Definitely want to do that. Hopefully it's been valuable for you. That's what we aim to do, is bring value and create an advantage for you in your business. As always, my name is Frederick Douglass Bussey. This has been another edition of Power Lunch Podcast. Ever forward.